And joining us today is Dr. Miriam Grossman. She is the author of Lost in Transnation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Allison.
Tell me a little bit about the book.
The book is a guide for parents to avoid the transgender catastrophe that's hitting so many families in our country right now. And I've written this book after several years of experience seeing these kids in my office and their parents and helping them navigate this very, very difficult situation where a child becomes convinced because of things they've heard, often at school, about the possibility of being in the wrong body, which medically, of course, is impossible. There's no such thing as being born in the wrong body, having, as they say sometimes, a male brain in a girl's body, impossible. And so my book is a guide for parents. It's not for professionals. It's not for PhDs. It's for regular moms and dads to understand what this is about and how to prevent it from coming into their family.
I think it is such a difficult time when you're a teenager because you're coming into your body, so you don't even know what's really going on, and you feel a lot of times teenagers and young people feel uncomfortable in their body.
Oh, of course, that's all. We all know that. And we all went through some degree of comfort, more or less, discomfort, more or less. But what's happening now, Allison, is that kids are being told that if they feel any degree of discomfort, then it may be an indication that they're transgender. Okay, if they have, forget about, the changes of puberty, but if they just might have any social anxiety or have trouble making friends or have a bad day when they're down or depressed, and these things are being suggested to kids, actually, often at school. And so right now, during the month of August, I'm making a special effort to reach parents and let them know that they have to be aware that there are risks at schools. Some schools are veritable indoctrination centers, and I'm sorry to say this, but there are activists in our schools, teachers, guidance counselors, principals, who may have an agenda and who may want to recruit your child into this belief system. And it is a belief system. It is more like a religion than anything else. There is no scientific foundation to this idea that we can be something that's separate from our bodies, that we can identify as something that is completely the opposite of what our bodies say we are. There's no medical basis for that.
It seems to be a slippery slope because, especially in the public schools, now there is this gender affirming care, and in different states, whether you inform the parent that the child is going by a different name. What question should parents be asking school boards or teachers? Should they be asking, what are my rights?
Oh my goodness. Parents have to know that the Constitution has given them the right to be in charge of their child's education. And that includes the right to say to schools, I do not want my child learning about gender ideology. And I certainly do not permit my child to go by any other name or pronouns or use the wrong bathroom. Now, I want parents to understand, Allison, that the professional organizations of principals, school counselors, school psychologists, these professional organizations all have policy statements that say that the school is obligated to keep it a secret from parents if their child so requests. So if your teenage daughter who's in 9th or 10th grade or middle school comes to her teacher and principal and says, I'm identifying now as a boy. I want you to use this name and these pronouns. I want to use the boys' bathroom and changing facilities, but I do not want my parents to know about it. They are going to keep that a secret from you.
That's
Yes.
that's very difficult to come to terms with. So parents absolutely need to be aware and confront.
Well, yeah, Allison, what I have, I'm giving parents those tools now that you're asking about. So first of all, I have a chapter in my book. My book is called Lost in Transnation. And I know that everyone is really, really busy, but this can save your family. I have a chapter there specifically about what's going on at schools, and it will describe to you, you will understand the risks. When you send your kid off to school in the morning, I want you to understand what the risks are. And I want you also to fill out a form that's on my website. I'm going to tell you where it is in a second. This is a form written by attorneys who are specialists in parental rights. And this is a form you can download, print it out, sign it, and bring it into your principal. It basically says you are putting the school on notice. You do not give the school permission for any of this stuff. You don't want your child learning gender ideology in any classroom, any special assembly, any club, any video that might be shown. You are opting your child out, and you are letting the school know in advance. I'm not talking about families who already have a child who's involved with this gender identity issue. I'm talking about all parents. I want every parent in the country, everyone that's listening right now, to go to my website, which is miriamgrossmanmd.com, MIRIAMGROSSMANMD.com. And you will see right there on the landing page a link to the parent form for schools. You just open it up, print it out, sign it. You are putting the school on notice that you don't want any of this. Now, the schools can argue that legally they have to hide it from you, this information, but that is not correct. And schools, teachers, principals have been taken to court in various places. And you know what else I want parents to know? Teachers who are courageous enough to do the right thing and to contact parents when their child has begun this process of what they call social affirmation, new name, new pronouns. Teachers who are uncomfortable with hiding that from parents, who have then informed parents, have been fired. And I tell these stories in my book. So this is a dangerous time. Now, I'm sure that the majority, I hope the majority of people working in the schools where you send your children are wonderful, caring professionals who only want the best for your child. But I do want you to live in reality. And I want you to know that there are activists out there, and they do want to reach your child before you do. And they may be telling your child that if your parents don't go with this narrative, and if your parents refuse to call you by your new name and pronouns, well, then they're bad people. And you may not be living in a place that's safe, and you may need another home. This is going on in our country right now.
Why is it going on? One of the statistics that you pointed out was that the rate of trans identifying kids is up 5,000%. Why?
There's probably a few answers to that, some of which might be unknown. But the ones that we are aware of is, first of all, there's elements here of a social contagion. And what that means is that, and we've seen it before, we've seen social contagions when it comes to eating disorders and sometimes with suicide. And that means when feelings or beliefs and behaviors can spread within a group of friends. And usually it's more typical happening with girls, with teenage girls, that certain behaviors are spreading in friend groups. And that's why we now, there are instances in which entire friend groups, like a group of 4 to 6 girls, will go to a clinic, to a Planned Parenthood together to ask for their testosterone. So this has become a social contagion. When one person is talking about it and gets involved with social transitioning, it has an effect on their friends. Now, mind you, the friend group can also be online. And I've had numerous kids in my office who are drawn into the transgender ideology from kids that they're meeting online. And therefore, another tool that I'm providing parents in my book is guidance on getting control of your child's social media and internet use. You must do this. You cannot have your child out there on social media, on YouTube, on Reddit, and Discord. They are meeting all kinds of people. Those people are often older and they are influencing your children. So beware. I've seen this time and time again. If they're groomed, the kids are groomed. Now, grooming is not only for sexual reasons. Grooming can be for other reasons as well. Now, often, this overlaps with sexual grooming, but the kind of grooming that I'm talking about now is more like an ideological grooming. Mm-hmm. It's sort of convincing the kids to bring them into this belief system. Again, it's a belief system. It's based on the irrational belief that we are something other than what our bodies say we are. It's a disembodiment. It's a philosophy that encourages disembodiment, living separate or opposed to what your body says you are. I mean, it's horrific. Who wants to feel disembodied? Of course, no one does. But this philosophy is encouraging it from a young age.
Okay, you are a loving parent. Your child comes home and they say, they're a girl and they identify as a boy, or vice versa. What is the first thing that you should do as a loving parent?
Okay, and I do have, again, in the book, I have an entire chapter based on those first conversations. Because, I obviously can't answer this, Allison, in just a few minutes. That's a big event in your family's life. That's not a minor thing. That's a big thing. And your child has prepared for this in advance. Your child is nervous because they want your approval, even though it looks like it doesn't matter. Believe me, they do want your approval. And these first few conversations are very important. So I would say just a few guidelines. Even though it's difficult, try to stay calm. And you will find it easier to stay calm if you're prepared in advance. This is why I want parents to be aware of this issue when their kids are still small. So if it does happen, and no family is immune, if it does happen in your family, at least you have read about it and you are somewhat prepared. So you do want to stay calm and you want to stay loving. And by that, I mean, this is not a time for an argument. There may be arguments down the line if your child is very insistent. There certainly may be arguments, but now is not the time for it. Now is the time to say, I'm so curious. When did you start feeling this way? Could you tell me more about it? What does this feel like? Do you know any other kids that feel this way? Where did you hear about it? Please explain to me what you're talking about, because I've never felt this way. And you want to give the child a chance to talk and just be present. You're not washing dishes. You're not scrolling through your emails. You're sitting with your child during a time that you're not going to be disturbed, maybe in the car, maybe somewhere else. This has to be a special one-on-one, or, both of you together, two parents with the child, listening and saying, wow, we can see that this is a big thing. We're going to learn all we can about this. But right now, we're not going to make any changes. First, we have to learn all about it. These are big, big things. Now, remember, parents, I'm speaking directly to parents right now. deciding to live life as the opposite sex is the biggest decision that anyone could make in their lives, because it puts you on a path toward medical interventions that are serious medical interventions, irreversible, sometimes causing, uh, lifelong infertility, sterilization, uh, sexual dysfunction, very, very big things. Huge impact on a person's life.
And I know that there are a lot of states that are coming up with legislation right now to have an age range. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think that there certainly should be restrictions. Absolutely. We cannot be carrying on these medical interventions in minors. Uh, we don't even have good data on the results of these interventions on adults. When adults who are mature and making these decisions on their own with fully informed consent, hopefully, we don't have good data on them either. The data that we have shows that they continue to suffer. They may feel better in certain ways, but in other ways, in terms of their mental health and their physical health, their risk for suicide, still extremely elevated. So it's not an easy lifestyle. And, in my profession, I'm supposed to be saying at this point that it's a child's journey, and wherever the journey takes them is fine and wonderful. And there's no one journey, no one endpoint that's preferred over another. But I'm not going to say that, because I took an oath to do no harm. And the best outcome for a child who's confused about being male or female is to return to feeling comfortable with their bodies, and to return to embrace who they are, live in their bodies, feel good in their bodies, and to avoid becoming lifelong patients and lifelong consumers of pharmaceuticals. Allison, this isn't talked about enough, but when kids go onto blockers, puberty blockers at an early age, and then almost 100% of them are moving on after that to cross-sex hormones, testosterone and estrogen, almost 100%. And when they do that, they are becoming lifelong patients. They have to stay on either estrogen or testosterone for the rest of their lives. So they are essentially, they're dependent on these drugs. So of course, the better outcome is to not be dependent for the rest of your life on pharmaceuticals. I mean, does this really need to be said? Unfortunately, it does.
It does. I think it does, because I think there are so many wonderful, loving parents out there. And I think there are wonderful people in the school systems. However, I think everyone is so afraid to offend someone else that they're not sharing their feelings and ideas with others, other parents, their children. They don't want to be accused of being a bad person. But that leaves everybody really without a road forward.
Because this has all been packaged within it's a kindness, it's respect, it's authenticity, it's civil rights. It's all been packaged in that way, But we have to remember that it's a child's right to grow up into to be a reproductive, a sexually functioning adult. I mean, to remove that, you see, we are actually creating, using these puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, we are creating asexual, sterile kids. They're asexual because they were never exposed to the hormone surgeries, the hormone surges of adolescence, which turns us into adults, and it changes our bodies so that we can be sexually responsive. Not only our genitals, and but our brain. We have to go through puberty to have a normal sexual response, to be able to get aroused, to be able to have orgasms. Now these kids, they're being blocked from that. And I'll tell you something else. When we block them, and then we block their puberties, we are removing their chance of possibly growing out of their dysphoria, their discomfort with their bodies, because puberty itself, natural puberty, not synthetic puberty, but natural puberty itself is often a cure for the gender dysphoria. And we are eliminating that. So there's just, appalling things that are going on. And I want to mention that you mentioned parents. I know we only have a minute left.
Yeah.
But you see, a lot of the parents are signing on the dotted line for these treatments because the gender experts are threatening them that their child will commit suicide if they do not. And they're using that line that so many parents have heard, almost every parent I've met with. Do you want a live daughter or a dead son? Now, of course, any parent is going to do anything necessary to save the life of their child. And when the experts with all the diplomas on their walls are saying, look, this is the way to help your child's in distress, there is a medical consensus that this is the only way forward for your child in order to give your child the chance of a happy and productive life. And that's why a lot of these parents are signing on the dotted line. The thing is, there is no medical consensus. And this is what I said when I testified a few months ago, in the House of Representatives. There is no medical consensus. There is a debate. And in countries such as Sweden, Finland, Norway, and England, they've all done a 180. They are not doing what we here in the US are, which is this early medical interventions. In fact, there was a Wall Street Journal, a letter to the Wall Street Journal last month. It was written by 21 gender experts from 9 countries. And it essentially said, what are you doing there in the United States? What are you doing? The evidence, we don't have evidence that shows what you're doing is going to have long-term benefit. And I'm concerned, Allison, we were talking about suicide. I'm concerned about suicide in the kids that go through the so-called affirming care and then regret. And
Well,
then they
I thank you so much for your book, because I really think it is a guide for parents, and especially the letter that you're talking about. School is about to start for many parents. That would be a good place for I believe, for many parents to start, is to get that letter into the school.
Yeah.
Maybe even have a discussion with your son or daughter. I'm putting this letter in, not because I'm telling you what to do, but because I want to have that conversation with you. And I'm open to speaking with you about it. That makes more sense than everything being done behind the scenes.
No. You have to reach your child first. And I would say that even early on, it doesn't matter. Even a little child can understand something like, you were a boy or a girl from the moment you were created on this earth. From that very first moment, because they're going to hear as they grow up, they're going to hear this phrase, sex assigned at birth, as if it's some sort of a random thing, and that the doctor or midwife may make a mistake, and you may not really be a boy or a girl. The adults may have made a mistake. And trust me, there's plenty of books in the libraries of schools and your public libraries written for toddlers, telling them that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and only you know if you're a boy or a girl. And you need to tell the grown-ups if you're a boy or a girl. So what I'm telling parents is you have to reach your kid first. But I do want you to say things like, You were always a boy and you will always be a boy, but there are so many different ways to be boys. And there are different kinds of men as well. And there are some boys that aren't into sports or into building things or trucks. There's boys that like fashion or cooking or I don't know, we have all these stupid stereotypes, right? But the gender ideology forces us into these stereotypes, which are so uncomfortable. And of course, in my generation, we were trying to get rid of these ridiculous stereotypes. And here they are back again. Oh, you don't like to wear pants? Maybe you're not a boy. You know, you're not into makeup? Maybe you're not a girl. You know, it's just absurd, but kids are believing it. Mm-hmm. And so I want parents to reach their kids and make sure also that the parents, that they themselves understand that you may have a boy or a girl that may not fit perfectly into your idea of masculinity and femininity. And you want to be okay with that. You do not want your child getting the message that, you know, if it's a boy who might be a little bit more feminine, you don't want the child getting the message that my parent disapproves, I'm not okay, because that can plant a seed. You don't want that.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Grossman. The book, again, is Lost in Transnation. I encourage everyone out there to get it, and it really is a wonderful guide. There you go. Lost in Transnation, a child psychiatrist's guide out of the madness. And we need all the help we can get right now. So thank you again, Dr. Grossman, for sharing your ideas today and being with us. I appreciate it. Thank you.